A long time ago, I was in Burma. My friends and I were working for the bandit, the size of a tangerine. So we went looking for the local government. In 6 months, I saw a tangerine, the size of a tangerine. The bandit had been a tangerine. A tangerine.
So Batman.
Batman. Actually, I didn't. The last time I did this, I didn't do an intro because we just launched straight into it, and it kind of felt a bit more natural instead of leaving like the title card up on screen.
Yeah.
So if you want, I can do the Dystropia intro, and then we can just start talking into it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's fine. It's just, yeah, it'd be grand. So we're doing a kind of a special this time, right?
Yep.
Something a bit different. Where going in, we already knew what we were talking about, what each other was going to bring up, rather than just hazarding an accurate guess. So we're, and as people can stop complaining about my audio now because I have a proper microphone.
You actually did get the microphone, yep.
Yeah. So we're doing, we're talking about Batman, all things Bruce Wayne.
Indeed.
And Gotham and everything and anything else associated with it. So because we've kind of been looking at, we'll take a topic and we'll look at it and we'll go, oh yeah, we want to talk about setting, or we want to talk about good guy, bad guy, story arc, whatever. But some franchises are big enough that they kind of are their own self-contained thing that they generate a lot themselves.
They become a genre.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier about the James Bond movies. There is a movie genre which is just James Bond, and sometimes you see another movie and go, "Oh, good, these guys are just doing a James Bond movie." That's kind of fun.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's the whole thing in any action RPG game where it's the Batman paradox: is that the longer the game series goes on, the closer your character becomes to being Batman.
That's it. If anybody has throwing weapons, that's a Batman character eventually.
And a grappling hook.
Yeah.
Can blend into their surroundings, can sneak up on 20 men at once and take them all out in like in a slow-mo quick time fight scene. Like, that's pretty much Batman. So
yep.
But yeah, so we just wanted to talk a bit around the different, what we like, what we dislike about how Batman is treated in both film, well, in not just both, but in film, in TV, and in gaming. The comics,
and I think the mythos around him as well. Like, it's an interesting character and interesting to the world, and there's no one defining thing you can point to and say, well, obviously the movies are the backbone of this. Obviously these comics are the backbone of this. It is now evolved into its own mythos.
And that's the thing. It's a weird thing with the comics. So Batman consistently shows up on the polls of favorite superheroes of all time. And then you invariably get somebody going, pushing their glasses up their nose going, well, actually, he's not a superhero because he doesn't have superpowers. He's just a hero. And then you kind of feel bad for that person because they're probably never going to have sex with a woman. And, stereotypes aside and all that. No, but
I'm sure they've got a lovely Nightwing body pillow that they snuggle up to in the evening.
But no, it's that whole thing of, he isn't technically a superhero. He falls under the category of Iron Man and that, where it's, or Green Arrow, where it is not a superhero so much as sociopath with billions. And
yes,
it's
and preternatural abilities.
No, but that's all honed through. I mean, when you're a billionaire and you can hire the best in the world to train you 16 hours a day, it's this is what will happen. Like, but yeah, I mean, he consistently shows up on the top list. You ask most people, what's your favorite superhero? What's your top 5 superheroes? Batman shows up there consistently. Batman comics are one of the lowest selling groups of comics produced.
Really?
Just people don't get them. They don't buy them. The graphic novels are quite popular as gifts, because they're it's, if you know someone's a diehard Batman, Nolan film franchise fan, and they've loved the Arkham games, you can go out and get them.
The Killing Joke,
the
Parliament of Owls, or whatever that one was called.
The Long Halloween, Year One, all these great series, and then give them to them, and they're able to read them and kind of go, wow, so that was the influence for this bit of the film or this bit of the game, and that's all great, but for some reason, like month on month, it just doesn't sell that well.
I could absolutely believe it.
It's a weird one because I think it's just I don't know. It's like there's such a I've seen people be disappointed when they get a Batman comic if they start collecting it, because a lot of the comics nowadays aren't about Batman. They're about Batman and his extended family of 17 sidekicks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's all adopted at some point.
It's Batman Incorporated, baby.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a weird one, but yeah. So it's an interesting one to take a look at.
As I didn't grow up reading the Batman comics, and I didn't grow up reading any comics, but I did every so often get one. It was the kind of thing that, as a weird little alt kid, somebody would eventually was like, "What can we get Johnny?" But we can't get him a football, so someone would eventually just give me a comic, and it would be Spider-Man or Batman or something. And I remember being given ones that dealt with deep psychological issues, or that dealt with death and dealt with all this, and read them going, I don't quite get the tone of this. I feel like I'm coming in halfway through a conversation that wasn't meant for me.
Yeah.
There was some very weird stuff going on in the Batman comics, even just in the publication comics. But having now, as an adult, gone back and read all the popular ones, read all the Year Ones and Long Halloweens, I can see why he would be a lot of people's favorite comic book characters, just because he is a fun character to deal with certain things. Like if other characters, and I know they have done it, if Spider-Man suddenly has to deal with really heavy shit, it feels like a tonal shift for a couple of comics, and you might lose some fans. But with Batman, it's nearly built to do that. He's built to do those weird, jarring tonal shifts.
Yeah, and when inside DC, he's unique in that the majority of DC heroes are. So Marvel is regular people with being elevated to gods. DC is gods trying to live as regular people.
That's a good way of putting it.
And that's why I think a lot of the time people don't identify as easily with the DC lineup. You know what I mean? It's not Spider-Man, a regular neighborhood. It's built into it. You know what I mean? He's an average guy, and something extraordinary happened to him, and then this happened.
Yeah.
Or it's whereas if you look at the likes of Green Lantern, yes, he can fly through space and can create anything with the power of his mind, and is allergic to the color yellow. It's like, well, okay,
not very relatable.
No, not particularly.
That makes sense, because I know that Batman has come from the kind of legacy of things like Sherlock Holmes and things like Zorro, and the Sherlock Holmes one always made sense to me. He is like this Prometheus style character who's bringing down otherworldly knowledge. Like when Sherlock Holmes speaks, he's drawing from a well of knowledge that seems to be just outside of reality. It doesn't make sense. Whereas Zorro is very much, he is a human who's just donned a mask and is doing some weird shit and is kind of having fun with it. And to me, the style is Zorro, but the Batman character was never that he was never that human.
No, it's probably the most human of the Justice League lineup. In the comics would actually be more like the Flash. So the original Flash, not going back to the whole Silver Age comics and all the rest, where they had the guy with the fucking Mercury's threads on them and the and all the rest, but the first kind of red suit with the lightning bolts. Barry Allen, he was a forensic scientist working for the police.
Right.
And then when he became superpowered, there was the whole conflict, similar to what they did with Daredevil, but I'm meant to try and uphold the law. How do I become a vigilante? There's a conflict there, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But then the most recent version of him, Wally West, he's the third one. He's not the most recent. They've done other ones, but he's kind of the one they keep bringing back. He's the one who's the most popular. He's the one who shows up in all the what's considered like probably the best run of JLA in decades, which is the Grant Morrison run, and he's the one in the Bruce Timm animated DC universe. He's he works with the police as well, but he's a mechanic.
Right.
He basically works on the patrol cars when they come in off shift. He just gives them the once over, and that needs a service grant. So he is the average guy, who has become empowered. So he's almost like their Spider-Man, but there is a very kind of real, palpable kind of down to earth sense. Batman doesn't have that, even though Batman is meant to be the guy who, like, particularly it was Kevin Conroy did it very well in the animated series, where when he's meant to be Bruce Wayne and he's acting all kind of casual and like, and he's not all dark and brooding, which I also think Val Kilmer did a fantastic job of. The Schumacher films are terrible, but I actually think he did a really good Bruce Wayne.
I think I'll give him 10 Batman points as well for being the first guy to lift a few weights to
actually play the role. Yeah,
to actually get big. Although Adam West did that. He didn't need molded plastic to complement his physique. It's pure West.
Pure West. But the that kind of affable character, and there's even bits of it in the Nolan trilogy. The whole when he buys the restaurant, but it's it's when he's climbing in the fountain because he's got the two young ones with him and he's meant to be drunk, and you're that's funny. But he's like, oh, I'm buying the restaurant. It's like, well, you've immediately lost any identification I had with this character because he's just flashing his billionaire dick around the place now. It's like, yes, look at my solid gold wang and get out of the way, peasant. It's,
I think Nolan wanted that, though, that it wasn't that he was trying to be the playboy. He was trying to be the dickish playboy that everybody hated and wanted to avoid. And he's like, that's what I want.
Yeah, because then he won't get invited out to things. And then he doesn't have to turn down social events and stuff. And that makes sense. But that's like Batman, well, a great character, and you can look at the whole thing of he is a regular person who has just the money and the time to perfect himself physically and mentally. But at the same time,
it's hard in the animated series when you see him literally on a space station on an ivory tower staring down at the Earth, and you're like, man, you've lost any semblance of connection to the people below you.
Yeah, but the majority of the time it's a billionaire beating up the hobos of Gotham City. Let's not dance around that part of it, but yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing. It's that he is probably the most liked character in DC. A lot of people find DC quite hard to get into from a readership standpoint, for the kind of the main Justice League group. I think once you get into it, the Grant Morrison one was done quite well because they're more kind of a lot of the characters in it are more natural. They're more kind of, we've just gotten these powers, we don't know what we're doing with them.
Yeah, in terms of visual style, and I know this doesn't map 1-to-1, but if you're looking at them as a pantheon of gods, teenagers and young adults, stuff like that, anytime you look at a pantheon of gods, your eye is drawn straight to the god of death. If you're looking at the Egyptian pantheon, you go straight to Anubis and his jackal head. If you're looking at the Greek gods, you might look at Zeus and stuff like that, but you'll find Hades and Ares. You'll find the badass guys, the guys who wear metal and lava. If as you glance across the Zeus of Superman and the Hera of Wonder Woman and everyone like that, you're going to end up on Batman and going, I know that's not what he is, but he's functionally, invisibly, he's the god of death.
Oh,
he's
they
the
play
dark
into that
figure.
If it's more in the comics than anything else, but there is a whole thing in the Grant Morrison. So the Grant Morrison JLA run, before we go into the specifics of film, TV, games, I would suggest there is a list, and we'll post it probably with this. I should remind myself to do that when we go to post it. But there's a list of standalone Batman novels I'd recommend for people who are kind of interested, who have grew up on the cartoon series and have played the games and have watched the films, but don't know how to get into the comics because it's such a big catalogue. I'll put up 3 or 4 good graphic novels that are great for just kind of, these are little kind of, takes you an hour to read them, but they're really solid entertainment. A lot of ones that influence the films. But for the Justice League, because Justice League and Batman, Superman and Justice League have kind of put a lot of people off the concept of it. Grant Morrison did a run of them. He started it, and other writers came in and out over the years, and it ran for 10 years. It was 120 issues. And it starts off with the classic, with like the kind of the base 7, because there's usually 7 in the starting lineup for the Justice League, and it's Martian Manhunter, the Batman,
Flash,
Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, and my brain is blanking on the 7th one because I'm trying to remember who it was in that lineup. I think
Spider-Man. It's fine. It's probably Spider-Man.
No, I think it was Plastic.
It's always.
I think it was Plastic Man. But and they actually covered a story in that 10-year arc where they explain how, and when they do it, it's very convincing that Plastic Man is the most powerful man in the JLU.
Really?
Yeah, he can take out everyone. But there's a whole thing where that's kind of Wally West's first version of the Flash in the Justice League, and he's very young and he's very, very inexperienced. And then you have Kyle Rayner, who was the 4th Green Lantern, and the other, like, 2 of the others are still dicking around, but like he's the one in charge of things, because they're like police. You get rotated on and off duty, and he was picked to be it. And he's actually a graphic designer, so all his constructs that he makes as Green Lantern are all like cartoonish. Like there's a bit where he needs, there's a tidal wave rushing towards the city, so he makes a giant JCB and lifts the city out of the way, because it's just in his head that's the most practical way of dealing with it. And the pair of them are quite good at being the kind of naive, fish out of water. Even though they're very powerful, they're very kind of, we're not sure what we're doing. And there's several times where, like, every so often Batman will say something or look at one of them, and they're like, what did I do wrong? What's gone wrong? There's even a point where, like, Batman turns to the Flash and puts his hand on his shoulder, and he's like, Wally, I need you for something. And he's like, Batman's touching me. Am I going to die? And it's just it's the instant reaction of like, oh, I'm fucked. So yeah, it is that kind of god of death, the ominous spectre, like of impending doom.
And there's this weird thing that happens that no matter how godlike a superhero is, they always, if they pair up with Batman, they always have to end up playing the straight man to Batman's like vastly supernatural seeming abilities. And I love ones where it's like 2 characters walking through a sewer, and they're one, no matter who the other powerful person is, if it's Green Lantern, they freak out a little bit, and Batman has this, and you're like, how could you possibly have this?
Yeah.
How do you know what's going on already? There was ghosts a minute ago.
There was one of them. There was, I think it was one of the I can't remember if it was a comic or a cartoon, but there is like Superman's the only one who's kind of unfazed because he's been to the Batcave so often. Yeah. And he's trying to get, they're trying to get there, and at some point he's like, I think Batman's knocked out, and he brings him in, and Alfred comes out with a shotgun, and he's like, oh, it's you. And someone's like, and there's the whole moment of someone's like, Batman says something to criticize someone, and he's like, you have your butler guard your secret cave with a shotgun. What are you talking about? Like, it's because it's the whole thing of he is the one character who just sees through everything that Batman is. And, you know what I mean? But there's a lot of others that kind of the Justice League run is quite good. See, I never really liked Superman growing up. I thought he's too clean cut, and he is from Mark Miller, the writer, actually said it quite recently, that Superman isn't really identifiable for a lot of people because he belongs to a very, very uniquely to an America that doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah,
so,
I can see that.
Where like everything, it's the apple pie, everything is great, everything is wholesome, and I will fight to make those things right. And he's not really, he's the only one who, he hasn't really modernized quite well. Whereas the other characters, they're able to go, like with like the Flash, the likes of Green Lantern, they're able to pass the mantle along. Someone else can become that. And they kind of like they do that well, but that run is very well done. Like the all the various kind of big bad guys from DC show up over the course of the thing, and they're dealing with galactic scale threats. It's not the whole thing of, oh no, Earth's in danger again. Convenient how it's always Earth that's getting fucking attacked, isn't it? And they even explain why that happens. There's a universe canon reason why Earth keeps getting attacked.
Because it's the Hellmouth from Buffy.
No, it's the opposite. It's
It's called the angel anus.
It's called the fourth planet is what we refer to, and someone's like, no, this is the third one. And it's like, we're not talking about geographically. It's just, there's Apocalypse, which is the planet of Darkseid, he's at war with kind of in a stalemate at a cold war with the planet of the New Gods. The New Gods,
Right.
there's like basically everyone on the planet is a superhero. Every single person has unique powers, and his son, Darkseid's son, fights for the New Gods, and the leader of the New Gods, his son, fights with Darkseid. The whole idea is they traded kids as a kind of a stalemate, as a way to look, you will destroy your own family if you do this.
Proper old dynasty shit. Yep.
Yeah, and there's a whole thing where Metatron, who's like, not the dogma Metatron. We're not talking Alan Rickman here.
Alan Rickman with his no cock, with his smooth action man Ken doll undercarriage.
Not quite so sexually enticing. So he's basically he's a character who's.
I mean,
he's kind of the ambassador to Earth from the New Gods. He shows up every so often to advise them when stuff is going down. And he basically explains, he's like, our world, everyone came to power millennia ago. And we have been in power for hundreds of millennia. But we weren't the first. There was planets before us. And Earth is the next one. We know this is coming. This is why superheroes are starting to appear on Earth. Eventually, everyone will be a superhero. You are the next planet. And then when this happens, it will be Earth's responsibility to defend the universe. So there's a whole logic to it. So
I like anything like that where I don't like the idea of fate in any other media. It doesn't gel with me for whatever reason. But it works so well in superhero media because it kind of has to. The reason that then you can do parallel universes but still have a Spider-Man, still have a Batman, still have people who have to fill these roles is because it is fate that we would do it. And it also explains why there's not superheroes in our world because, there has to be a catalyst. There has to be something that kicks all this stuff off, and it just hasn't happened for us yet. But in the parallel universe, one step over, there is the Batman. There is all this stuff.
And it's already started. And that's the idea behind the DC universe. It's covered all in the JLA where they're like, this is why you have supervillains. This is why you have superheroes. This is the start. This is the very first ripple in the pond.
Yeah.
And it will come a time where Earth is responsible for the safekeeping of this universe. And it's like, so it's a nice little kind of build up, but and I believe at one point that Batman even says he's already got a plan to deal with everyone. He's like, it's fine. You can all become superpowered. I still got this.
If we're sticking with comics for a minute, one of my favorite standalone comics of Batman is Batman Arkham Asylum, a Serious House on Serious Earth, which was a Grant Morrison one where they kind of took the reins off him a little bit and let him go a little bit fucking mental with it. And it's the artist who did it with him was Dave McKean, he did Sandman back in the day, but the style of art is very psychotropic. What's the word I'm looking for there?
No, I know what you're talking about. It's I'm not sure how to explain it, but I know exactly the style of art. It's very dreamlike.
Yeah, it's a lot of cut up stuff. Like he will use any medium he needs to get the dreamy style he needs. So it's layers of wallpaper and then sketches and then drawings and then photographs and then on the end of all that. But if he needs to do a Francis Bacon-esque style image where a face is twisted in order to get a feeling, or if he needs to put red paint all over the already drawn panels in order to get a feeling, he'll do that. But it is very, very kind of dreamy and nightmarish and distorted kind of style. And it could, like, one page might just be a photograph of an old rusty key, and then the next page is 9 really tight panels of the Joker speaking directly to the reader. And it is a really, really interesting one because it is. I like the psychological stuff of the Batman character. The idea that all his characters deal with insanity. The kind of going over and back on whether the Joker is insane or hyper sane. Can he see stuff that isn't, like, is he seeing through society and through culture and seeing stuff that we can't? And that's why he's acting the way he's acting. What does the Batman see? All this kind of stuff. And as they go in and go through Arkham Asylum, he's seeing all the different inmates. And in some cases he sees them as they see themselves. In some cases he's seeing them kind of as he sees them, like sees them through fear and things like that. And they have Two-Face in there who's a shell of a person at this stage, where they've been breaking him down. And the idea is that whoever's treating him has decided that because he's got this binary decision making tool, that's what's causing him to be act either good or completely evil. So they got him up to a dice at one point where he's able to make decisions that had more options, and they eventually get him up to a set of tarot cards. So now he has loads of options. When he needs to think something through, he's laying out tarot cards, but he's so completely paralyzed by it. Like, the Batman finds him and is just fucking nearly weeping for him. Like, this guy is stuck to a table and he's paralyzed by indecision and can't do anything, and everything he's doing, he's flipping tarot cards. And one of the last things that Batman does in that comic is, as he's leaving, just puts a coin in front of Two-Face and is like, I'd rather see you as you were. But it's never clear as this is a dream of Batman or this is an actual thing that happened or anything like that. Like, that seems like such a weird moment at the end.
I don't know. That makes, to me, it makes a lot of sense, because the backstory of Batman is that Harvey Dent is actually quite a good friend of Bruce Wayne. So it's not really done in the films. It's a little bit of the whole romantic rivalry thing. But in the actual, in the comics and all the rest, he's very close friends with him. He's the guy. It's essentially, Rachel is never there, but he still ends up getting him funded because he sees him as the viable legal method of cleaning up Gotham. Yeah. He becomes like his staunchest supporter, and he's at every fundraiser and he's at every speaking event, because it's like, if I'm there, you get an extra 20 cameras and that type of thing. So it's the whole thing of, a lot of it is when he runs into him, there's the tragedy. Like, I could understand him giving back the coin, because at least then he knows 50% of the time it will be his old friend.
Exactly, it'll be Harvey Dent. It's a really, really interesting comic. And I love Grant Morrison anyway. He's got that, like, I love listening to him speak on other podcasts and stuff. He's got that kind of rich Scottish background, and clearly has taken every fucking drug under the sun to explore every. He's like an affable Alan Moore. It's like he wants to explore all these interesting concepts, but he's not a cunt about it. Yeah. I wonder if I can bring all this back to one story. So we've got Grant Morrison, who did the Arkham Asylum one. He was on another podcast. We already mentioned Kevin Smith stuff. He was on the Fat Man on Batman podcast, and he was talking about taking the reins of the Batman story and stuff. And he said that one of the reasons he wanted to do Batman so much is because Alan Moore had done The Killing Joke, which is, again, a kind of a one-shot, really interesting kind of dissection of the Joker and Batman's relationship to each other, and how they are going to, they're in this destructive spiral. And the last scene in the Killing Joke, again, I'm not supposed to be ruining endings of this, but these are ancient comics. You should be out finding these and reading this. Is a really weird, and it doesn't make sense, interaction between the Joker and Batman, where the Joker tells like, they're both standing there, the Joker tells Batman a joke, and they both start laughing.
Two lunatics escaping from an asylum, and they come up to the rooftop, and there's a gap over to the next building, and the first one says, quick, shine the torch across, and then I can run across the beam, then toss the torch to me, and then I'll hold it and you can run across. And the new one's like, what, are you crazy? You'll just turn the beam off and I'm halfway across. And I get what you mean about it. It seems like an odd thing. The more I think about that one, the more I think it's meant to be Batman trying his best to reach out to him.
Well, the middle panel, if you look at the last sequence, it's nine images, and it's Batman and the Joker, and the police are coming, and like, this is the end. The Joker's going back to whatever cell or hole that he's always going to, and he says it to Batman, and then Batman smiles, and then they both start laughing. And in the middle panel, Batman reaches out and puts his hand on the Joker, and they're both like, they're laughing so hard that they can't stand up straight. And then in the third last panel, you can see a beam of light from the police coming towards them to arrest the Joker. And then the laughter stops. And then the next panel, like, you can hear the sirens. The next panel is just a beam of light. And the last panel, the beam of light is gone. And Grant Morrison puts forward the idea that in that moment, Batman realized that him and the Joker are going to be doing this forever. Two lunatics escaping the same asylum. And that him reaching out is him strangling and breaking the Joker's neck, and him basically saying, no, we can't arrest him, we can't keep going.
I've heard that, but I've also, like, it's my own theory on it is more that he normally doesn't laugh at the jokes. He normally, it's because he doesn't like to encourage them. But at that point, it's almost like him extending the olive branch. It's the whole thing of, if I laugh at this joke once, you know what I mean? Like, it's because he's like, again, it's almost like the Two-Face thing. it's Batman knows his enemies so well that he doesn't like dealing with them when they've changed. So it's the whole thing of he sees the Joker almost depressed by the realization that they're going to keep doing it, and he's almost like, if I start laughing, then he'll know that he can get to me, and he's extending a ray of hope almost to him. That's my own kind of thing on it though. Like
in any other comic that would have made sense, but for the contents of that comic, the amount of dark shit the Joker's just done to get to that point, the idea of Batman throwing him a bone seems a little bit mental. Although,
but that's part of it. I mean, like, it's Batman is meant to be like Batman. They don't really do it in the comics. In the cartoon. The cartoon, he'll just, oh, you're evil when someone says they're going to do something. In the comics, more so than anything else, Batman is always trying to talk the enemy down because he doesn't like. He hates violence. Full stop. He hates he wants to make sure that people, he wants to see them get help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's more why I think it's him going like, I have to make this gesture because otherwise, like, it's like he could get even worse. He could just spiral out even worse. Well,
this is I think Batman's collecting insanity a little bit. I think he just wants to see one of every type of insanity, and it's nearly like Sherlock Holmes beating up dead bodies to see how long they can keep bruising. He needs every piece of info he can get. I love the idea that he's dealing with all these people because they interest him, but he can't really say it like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a valid argument with Batman. This is why it's so interesting. It's like Batman would be shit if he didn't have his rogues.
Yeah.
His rogues gallery is one of the most interesting if not just DC, Marvel, any comic book. Like, he just has this really good collection, and they're all boiled down to one. It's like one simple. It's one simple need driven to an extreme. The Joker is just the need for disorder.
Yes.
For rebelling against everyday modern quote unquote acceptable norms. Killer Croc is just rage. He is rage. He is anger. He is. They've redirected him in recent years because of Bane. So they've redirected him. So it's more Bane is all about supremacy. But for a while, Bane was anger. But Bane is all about supremacy because, ignoring the shitty Schumacher appearance, he is meant to be as smart as Batman, and they did kind of do that in the films as well. And so he is meant to be on the same kind of intellectual level as Batman. He's able to keep up with him. He's able to outthink him. He's able to outsmart him. But he has the physical prowess to beat him in a fight. The Riddler is, it's his asking riddles of people is a weird version of him trying to increase his own knowledge.
It's a I mean, everyone is a narcissist and an egomaniac in this as well. Everybody needs people to see their version of their thing.
Oh yeah. But the driving route for him is information. It's the need to know as much as he can. And the Penguin is greed, because the Penguin is always the fence. He's always the one who just robs stuff to sell it. And the Catwoman, her one is almost the chase. She needs the chase. She robs for the thrill of it. She could go for easier targets that would draw less attention, but it's not interesting to her. Though in the comics recently, they're getting married.
Catwoman and Batman.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne proposed, and she said
to Selena Kyle.
Yeah, she said yes.
Did he propose in Batman guise or in Catwoman guise? Catman guise?
He pulled the cowl down and proposed to her. There's a whole big arc going on at the minute about it.
Really?
Yeah. So, and a lot of, that's the thing, because when they first started kind of teasing that in the comics, people were kind of like, I think DC themselves were worried. They're like, oh, don't know, him getting with one of the villains, and all the fans are kind of like, it makes sense, because the people he spends the most time with, other than the kids,
I was going to say,
we don't want you to go down that road, and it's essentially workplace romance, and there's the whole thing of Bruce Wayne will get bored if the person he was dealing with, the person he was married to, wasn't able to keep up with him and keep that kind of, keep messing with him and all the rest.
Yeah,
because he needs someone who can hold his attention.
Yeah,
from his cause, because his cause is justice. His one defining feature, he matches up with the rogues in that he is a narcissist and an egomaniac, but his one is justice.
He has a reflection in every other villain though. He has, he does things every so often which would be described as just descending things into chaos in order to get to an end of something, and that is the Joker. He'll do something to prove he's smarter than someone. He'll do something to prove he's better than someone. He'll beat up all of the Justice League just to prove a point to them that he is better, that he has all the information on them, that he could beat them if he needed to, like the Riddler. He'll do a move every so often that is a reflection of one of his bad guys.
What they've become quite good at doing though is, particularly in the animated series and stuff like that, is that they set it up so it doesn't look like he's the bad guy when he does it. There's a point where they have to escape from a fight and they all bounce through a portal and they're like, oh no, we gotta, it's like Darkseid invades. It was in one of the animated films, and Darkseid invades and we need to go undercover, and it's like, I've got an identity to keep, and it's meant to be this point where they don't openly tell each other's identities, and it's like well, how are we gonna and Batman just turns around and he's like Wally West, and he just names them all off, and then he's just he names one, he's like Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne, and pulls his skull down and he goes, okay, let's get on with this, and they're all like, what?
Great.
Just the moment of did he really just do that? There's a lot of moments that, again, it's the called. It just reminded me as well of the sewer moment with things in Justice League War, where he does the whole thing of he's talking to Green Lantern, and Green Lantern's like, "What are you, a vampire?" And he's like, "Nope." And he's like, "Well, what's your superpower?" And he just looks at him.
But you can fly, right? And he's like, "Nope."
Yeah, he just looks at him. He's like, "What's your superpower?" And he just smiles, and then he's like,
he goes, "Don't tell me you're just a guy in a bat suit."
Yeah, and then he's looking at the ring, going, "What's this do?" And he's like, "What? How did you get that off me?"
Yeah. In terms of movies, then, do you want to? I guess we can kind of do a little history of all the movies that that existed.
The relevant ones. I mean, there was TV movies back in the.
Yeah, I'm not that pushed about the Adam West years.
I think there was even one before then.
I think there was actually.
Sorry, just this is something that we're going to say, and this might shock one of our listeners or viewers. The whole thing of Batman doesn't use a gun. Batman used a gun for the first 14 issues of that comic. He shot people because he was based on the Shadow, and the whole point of the Shadow is the Shadow had two pistols that he used, or two pistols. Batman had pistols. He had his grappling hook. He had his pistol. So,
also, once you're firing missiles from a car, saying I don't use guns isn't a particularly cool thing to try and sell.
Yeah. For the purposes of this, for the purpose of my storyline, it will be the fall that kills this guy. Throw him off the building. I mean, that's something that they kind of. It's the suspension of disbelief that everyone has of no, Batman doesn't kill, because that's the thing that they use against him. So but yeah, there was the. So here's the
Tim
thing.
Burton,
the Tim Burton
kind of era. Yeah.
Now, aside from my hatred of Tim Burton, because I do have a well-documented hatred of Tim Burton, right?
Yep.
If he could just catch fire and die, that'd be great. But
oh god, the smell of that would be horrible. I just feel like he'd smell worse than anyone else on fire. He looks like he's all greasy hair.
But not I remember watching them growing up and being actually these are great.
Oh yeah, they were so much fun.
But they have not aged at all. They have aged so badly.
Really?
They are, go back and watch them. They are just. It's amazing how bad they are.
I mean, he did certain things well. He really wanted to put Sharon Stone in a skin-tight catsuit that they had to sew her into. He did that very well.
It was Michelle Pfeiffer.
Or Michelle Pfeiffer, sorry.
Far hotter than Sharon Stone was. Come on.
And Danny DeVito as the Penguin, I still really like.
That's the thing.
His little weird flipper things.
The villains are kind of the only good things about the Burton films.
And
I know we've said that Batman is only as good as his rogues, but the actual Batman part of it is very weak in those films.
Right.
I don't know. The Joker is. It's an version of the Joker. That's fine. The Joker's never been done the same way twice. That's kind of the point. It's the many faces of chaos is kind of what he is. But yeah, you could tell Jack Nicholson having a laugh with it. Great, you know. But I mean, yeah, the second film had some great bad guys in it. Second film had even Max Shrek having what's his name? Just after disappearing out of my head now. Your father, what is watch up his ass?
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken as Max Shrek.
You're pushing Selena Kyle out a window. That's all kind of fun.
But I mean, even like, you know, just little portrayals like that. Yes, Danny DeVito's fantastic in it. Danny DeVito's father in that film is played by. Do you know? Don't look it up.
No, go on.
It's Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman.
Really?
Yeah. And that was shortly after the whole getting caught wanking in a porn theater thing. So it was kind of the only.
I guess I didn't know him for that at the time, so it never struck me.
Yeah, and obviously I mentioned it before, but Harvey Dent, when he appears in those films, is played by Billy D. Williams, Lando Calrissian. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. Those films never held up for me. I mean, what's your feeling on them? What's your kind of?
They're pure style, and if you don't like the style, that's it. Like, game over. There's nothing you can really take from it. The shots I really like, the ones that stick with me, and even then going into the Schumacher ones where he brought along some of that Tim Burton style, is shots of someone lying on the ground in the snow, broken body with cats licking at them. It's the shots of like somebody pushing someone in a office chair who's wrapped in cables out through a window. You have to have these big crazy shots and set pieces and things, because that's how you birth something as crazy as the Joker or the Riddler, all this kind of stuff. And it's so easy to do in comics. I don't know if it's easy to do, but you can make these perfect like close-ups that take up an entire page, or do quick fire cut shots, or you can change your art style to sell something. And I think the Tim Burton ones were the first time where they're like, the idea of having a giant, and maybe I'm kind of skipping past the first one and the stuff and focusing on the giant rubber ducks and stuff of the really over the top stuff of Batman Returns. But even in the first one of him,
he did have a bigger budget then. He was, he was given more room to play with, and
the neon punk clown guys smashing up the art gallery and stuff like that. But everything was over the top, and I liked that. There's no way you could go halfway with it. Even the doctor who's trying to fix the Joker, all of his tools look fucking ghastly and horrible, and all of them look like they would kill someone in a second, because it has to be that over the top. It has to be that ridiculous. You can't suddenly have the Joker. You have to create a world where everything's so insane that it could create the Joker. But I can completely see them not holding up. We now have superhero movies because Tim Burton did that stuff, because Sam Raimi was able to do a blockbuster that held our attention, and because M. Night did Unbreakable and was able to prove.
I would put something ahead of most of those.
Go on.
Which would be the Blade films.
Blade is
Marvel. Blade is kind of the first attempt at Marvel to do a blockbuster film that was not aimed at a universal market. Because the Blade films were like 15s and 18s when they came out, and they even have the Marvel credit thing flash up at the start.
Yeah,
and those films were just very well received, and it was the whole thing of if we just treat it as a good film, why not? Why can't it work? I think more than anything, the Marvel Cinematic Universe owes a huge debt to Blade and Blade 2.
I think that's absolutely true, but I don't think you can take any one of those parts out and still have the same thing. I don't think you can remove Blade and still get to where we're at today. I don't think you can remove Tim Burton or Sam Raimi or
I more want to mention it because it's one of those ones that often gets overlooked.
I mean, especially with Black Panther stuff kicking off at the moment, and everybody's posting up, what about Hancock, what about Spawn, what about this, what about that, and I was like, Blade!
So there was the same thing happened with, I think it was after Deadpool. It was like, oh, congratulations on Deadpool on being the first successful R-rated superhero film. And it's just a picture of, like, Wesley Snipes' guy going, yeah, that's nice. It's like, thumbs up, and it's like, I can. They have kind of mentioned though that they want to get at least a cameo of Blade into the Marvel universe.
That would be pretty cool.
Kevin Feige was talking to San
it
Diego
would work.
Comic-Con last year. I think he was talking to Wesley Snipes about it. He was like, just get him in somewhere, get him in as a reference and a nod, and
it would work if he could kill Deadpool at some point. I know Deadpool will come back, but just as payment for Blade Trinity, where
he's the only good thing in Blade Trinity is Ryan Reynolds.
There came a point where clearly Wesley Snipes wasn't reacting to Ryan Reynolds, and like was just kind of phoning it in a little bit, and Ryan Reynolds was like, "Can I just do whatever the fuck I want?" So okay.
Yeah, it's the moment where I was kind of like, okay, I like this character, because Hannibal King is very different in the Blade comics. But when he comes busting in through the after I think Blade's been arrested, or one of them has been arrested, and he comes busting in through the window, and he's got a flak jacket on him, and there's a name tag on it that has "Hello, my name is fuck you." And I was just kind of like, okay, right, we're not even going to be like subtle about this one, that's fine. So, but yeah, I mean, like, the Burton films, yes, they were kind of, they're one of the pillars, one of the foundation pillars of the current superhero trend, but I think a lot of it then, you know, I don't know, maybe if in a way I almost think it made them, the Schumacher ones were almost like they almost removed all the good work that the Burton films did. Yeah,
the Burton films, I remember the new audience coming to it, and I kind of remember people being pissed off. Obviously there wasn't like the internet and everything back in the day, but I can kind of remember people being, it must have been for Batman Returns, kind of pissed off at how they were changing stuff from the comics, but a whole new audience getting on board, and it was all the hype about it, even the merchandise, all the everything about this was
the Prince album.
There's the what?
Bat Dance.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, how could you forget that, man? Come on.
But yeah, and then they went so far off the deep end with that, where they basically decided to forget about any previous audience and went, let's just focus on the merchandise, on all this new audience, all the fucking kids we can sell this stuff to.
Let's put nips on Batman. Don't think people are going to fly with it. But we've also got Alicia Silverstone in latex. Okay, they might forgive you. Turns out they didn't. So, you know. Poor Chris O'Donnell. What happened to his career?
Yeah.
You think being able to dry laundry the way he did in that film would have, stood the test of time? It's the one scene that sticks out in that film, even years later. The best thing about those films, about the Schumacher films, was the soundtrack. We got "Kiss from a Rose," which is a phenomenal track. We got "Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me" by U2, which is one of actually U2's decent tracks. We got "The End Is the Beginning Is the End" by the Smashing Pumpkins, which is a phenomenal piece of music. But we also got "Nips on Batman." We got "Chill Out." Fucking like.
I forgot about the Chris O'Donnell character, and it's that saying of like when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. All he could do was gymnastics, so everything needed to be solved by gymnastics. And the bit where he needed to keep a door open that Batman went into, so he had to gymnastics his way through the entire house and catch it at the last minute. You're like, put a bit of tape on the door, lad. No, a bit of tape on that lock.
Like how hard is it to just stick a broom handle in there? Yeah. But we paid a heavy price for those couple of good songs. So.
Shall we jump forward then to the Nolan years?
See, I think you're better off looking at the animated series in between. The animated series,
let's do that.
The TV series, that kind of took. Well, okay, they were like, okay, there is a market for Batman. There is definitely an audience for it. But we don't. I think it's better if we keep it bare bones, trim it down, keep it stylized. And I love the. I'm going to mispronounce this, but the anachronous nature of that series.
Yeah,
you're never sure if it's modern day, if it's the 60s, or the 30s, if it's like the aesthetic on the cars, the blimps is very like
it's
30s
Chicago art deco 30s.
Yeah, whereas then like the computers are very 60s, 70s, like almost a nod to the Adam West stuff.
It's something that they kept going and did very purposely in Gotham, and I've noticed a bunch of TV shows recently doing it where they're not setting anything in any particular time, and they were basically saying, because like with Gotham they just didn't talk about it, And then somebody eventually asked them, I was like, what's the story here? I was like, well, we know what the crack is, but we didn't want to say it. But the idea is it is the past. It is before, like, it's, you know, it's maybe the, it is the past as Batman is a kid in it. Like, it's not the present. But it's the idea. It's the past where Wayne Enterprises exist. So you probably are in the 50s, but there's computers and flip phones. And if somebody needs to have a phone for a scene, of course they've got a phone. If somebody needs to have a computer, of course they can look something up on a computer. But it is the past, and it's that weird. The closest thing I can say, it's like the transatlantic voice back in the day, which is actually the Joker voice. The hey bats.
Yeah.
They didn't want to have a British European voice. They didn't want to have an American voice, so they just made this thing in between that's kind of like, everyone will get it.
And it was from there's no one state in America that it actually sounds like. It's
just,
you cannot tell where it's from. It's just, yes, that is a kind of American voice.
Well, this is a fine how do you do, like that kind of. It doesn't land anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that series that I thought did quite well was it set the tone. It stripped out a lot of the shit that had been building up, so it goes back to just him. Now they do introduce Robin, they do introduce Batgirl and stuff like that, but when that was over the course of 5 seasons, and as they introduce them, it's like they'll bring them in and then they'll fade them out for 4 or 5 episodes, bring them in again for a bit, fade them out, and it just gave him extra characters to talk to that he wasn't trying to punch at the same time.
And it had a lot of Alfred in it, and I always liked Alfred, and I don't like whenever anybody tries to make him an action guy or anything like that. I know he's supposed to be an army doctor guy. To me, Alfred is the Wizard of Oz. He is the one who's allowed behind the curtain and has to help keep this facade going.
There is a moment in a particular comic where when Alfred goes badass, you wholeheartedly enjoy it.
Right.
But that's the Injustice comics, so it's like setting an alternate version of, it's like the next step over thing again, like where what happens is that the Joker plants a nuke in Metropolis because he's like, it's no fun going after Batman. He always stops me. I want to go play with someone else. Right. And he sets a nuke off in thing, which ends up killing Lois Lane.
Oh wow!
And Lois Lane is pregnant with Superman's baby, and Batman is basically interviewing the Joker in an interrogation room, and the entire wall gets ripped off, and Superman comes in and he's like, not now, and he just basically pushes Batman out of the way and punches the Joker's heart out through the back of his chest. And it's the point where Superman goes off the edge and he's like, I had the power to stop this. Why didn't I use this fully? I've always tried to play by the rules here, but I could just stop it all. And he basically ends up running the planet, but he develops a serum that gives anyone powers to almost the strength of him. So it's like, you want to fight with me, great. You want to fight by my side, great. But you're going to go up against people who are massively more powerful than you. I have developed this. Take it. It will make you as strong as me so you can fight them. And there's a point where he beats the shit out of Batman. But Alfred in the background has taken one of the pills, and Alfred fucking schools Superman. Like, he beats him within an inch of his life. He kicks him so hard his entire shoe shatters off his foot, and then he picks up like Batman's lying on the ground, he can't walk. Alfred picks him up. He looks over at Superman on the ground, stomps on his head. Superman's lying there, half his face busted up, bleeding, can't walk, just fucked in general, and he's like, and he just goes, come Master Bruce, there's nothing worth saving here, and just walks out, and you're like, oh, the shade, that fierce fucking shade, like, it's a delicious little scene, and it's the whole, most of the time you want Alfred to be he's the sardonic wit, he's the foil to Batman, he's the guy who keeps him in check. But just that whole thing of like, there's nothing worth saving here, and I was like, yes! I was nearly coming out of my seat, pumping my fist so hard. Like, it was.
That's great.
It's actually quite a good comic because it's one of those the what ifs where they just twist everything on its head. Yeah, and you've got like Harley Quinn starts the underground and Batman joins the underground, but Harley Quinn is still the leader, and like when she's not got the Joker as a force affecting
in her life,
she becomes like one of the greatest like tactical leaders, and Batman's actually proud of her, and he's like, you know, if the Joker had never come along, like we could have been allies all the way through. You are amazing at this, and she's like, if the Joker hadn't come along, I wouldn't be doing this in the first place. Like that type of thing. There's a lot of kind of really nice character developments to it, and it's definitely worth reading. It's one of those comic series I would recommend. But yeah, in the TV series, I think they did get him kind of. The TV series has a lot of kind of the perfect portrayals, I think.
Yeah, and I think this might be, I don't know which came first in this case, but it felt like they were going back to basics with this. Now, it's probably not true. It's probably not the case that there was ever, like, Batman started off with the art deco style and the Chicago New York mashup and all this kind of stuff, but the music and visuals and use of color, like the very limited palette in the animated series, when they could go crazy and have all bright colors because it is a cartoon, but they really limit everything down to quite muted stuff. Even the Joker has black hair with a green highlight rather than full green hair, and his face is white but his teeth are yellow. Like, everything is muted down a little bit to make it seem a little bit dirtier and dustier and everything. And I really, really like that style, and it felt like it was them taking a little bit of a step back on, hey, let's not push too hard on the absolute crazy nature of this. Let's bring it back to it. It's gothic. Like, they make Gotham gothic again, and I mean that as the architectural and visual styles, as well as the Art Deco gothic style of really everything's concrete and squared off and everything. Like, his jaw is Batman's jaw is made of masonry in the comic, or in the animated series, where he is as much a part of the city as everything like that. And I know I always come down on the stylish point of things, but I'm an artist, so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, and I mean, that's fair. And I always look at the story because I write stories for a living. That's, you know, kind of like this is how this will break down. Like, yeah, one thing that they did consistently quite well in the TV series as well, though, was that Gotham always felt, in a weird way, hauntingly empty. You never saw people on the streets in Gotham, but at the same time, it was perfect because it was it almost felt like a stage play. That was one thing that the backgrounds always reminded me of. It was that type of, this is a stage play, like, and it was, you know, we only have the actors on stage when we need them. It didn't really rely on extras. Sometimes there'd be, like, somebody would raid a ball and there's loads of people there, and yes, then that makes sense. But any of the car chases, there's never anybody on the streets. It was a very kind of keep it simple, keep it, you know, focus the attention, because again, they were trying to get kids interested as well. So it's like, you don't want distractions. You want them watching exactly what you're pointing them at. So yeah, that was something that always kind of grabbed me about that. It was visually, like, from a storytelling perspective. And there's a great line in one of them as well where they're doing that chase thing. I think it's the start of the third season. It's the opening episode of one of the seasons, where Batman and Robin are in the car and they're chasing after a car that's trying to get away, and Batman's just, you know, the usual grim, determined look on his face, and Robin looks kind of bored, like he's kind of half slouched, he's got his arms crossed, and someone leans out from the car in front and starts hosing him with a machine gun, and it just goes, Robin's like, must be new in town. It's like and the fact that it doesn't, like, it was, but they're weaving through traffic, and it's the first time I think in the entire series where they're actually in traffic. Yeah, there's actually something in the way, because it had to be part of the story then, but before that they never had it.
It's so funny when you say about it being a stage play, because it's always like, for a city that's supposed to be this big, it's always Batman looking down onto streets that are empty, and like it would have been so easy to have lights and people milling around, and it nearly would have made more sense for him to then be protecting people if they did show them. But he's not protecting people, he's protecting Gotham.
Exactly. And you'll also notice that all the buildings are lit from the bottom like a stage.
Yeah.
There's very little overhead lighting. It's all from the bottom projected upwards.
There's the lighting for a cartoon is probably, like, I remember it winning awards. I remember, like, people saying about the Batman animated series winning all these really prestigious awards, because it would do things like have characters in full silhouette until there was a lightning flash. It would have people running across a rooftop with long shadows, and as their feet hit the ground, the shadows would, like, there'd be more movement in the shadows than the characters. And it was such a beautiful way of kind of selling weird things like distance and stuff like that. And when you're looking at rooftops, there was weird perspectives on certain roofs that they would just look like they go on forever, and the buildings around them would tilt outwards and tilt inwards to create very imposing,
almost cavernous spaces, like
as needed
on rooftops.
It was very nicely done for something that didn't need to be that good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it didn't have to be that visually stylistic, and kids still would have enjoyed it. I still would have enjoyed it growing up and all the rest. But I think that little detail, that kind of artistic style that they put to it, is why you can go back and watch it now and it's still enjoyable. It's still a great thing to have on in the background if you're just like I'll be playing a game, my other monitor, I'll have the Batman animated series playing on it because it's like it's just a good show to have on. But yeah, and then that kind of evolved into the, like, again, it did all the villains quite well. I thought there was all the treatment of each of them was quite well done. That kind of evolved into the Justice League, the JLA, and then what became JLU, Justice League Unlimited. And there was 5 seasons of that as well. Now, even then, there was Batman kind of faded out. But I think they were like, let's try and apply this art style to all of it. Let's see if this just can carry. And they did kind of tone down the stylized nature of the cities and stuff like that, you knew when they were back in Gotham.
Well, I mean, it's the otherworldly feeling of stage play Gotham from the original one with the blimps and stuff. When they went then to do Batman of the Future and stuff like that, I think they kind of just switched up what the content, but I think they did keep some of that. It went from Batman being on rooftops to Batman being in the air, always in a plane, always in a vehicle. So
the one you're talking about, it's Batman of the Future is what it was called in some territories. It's known as Batman Beyond as well, was the other name for it. And Kevin Conroy is still in it as Bruce Wayne, but he's an old man.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of.
He takes in like a youngster and basically starts training him because crime starts to become resurgent, and he's like, the symbol has to go back out. Something has to happen. So he trains this guy's something McGinnis, Terry McGinnis, and he. But yeah, like they keep the style in that, but with the that jumps ahead like 50, 60 years. The JLA, JLU ones are set at the same time as the Batman ones, or they're set immediately after the 5 seasons of the animated series, and they're focused in on the on like those bigger threats that I mentioned earlier that the JLA always come up against. Darkseid shows up. Somebody decides they're gonna, I'm going to detonate a nuclear bomb inside all the volcanoes at once because, okay, right, we got to deal with this shit now. But they do, like I was saying, they do kind of ease off on the stylized nature of the settings.
Yeah,
but they do keep the kind of character style the same. There's a lot of a character first being introduced by the shadow that they cast, or by the you only see a flash of a weapon or something like that, and it's very kind of punchy.
I always liked in the animated series and even in the later versions of them where they wanted to introduce somebody who had been affected by the Joker. It would be someone in shadow, and as they step forward, the bottom half of their face would catch the light, and they'd have a smile that was just a little bit too big. And they did that once with Robin, where as he steps forward, it's just a smile and like not even the eyes, it's just a silhouette with a smile. And I remember looking at it going, that's pretty creepy.
Yeah, and I mean, that was the one thing that, like, your man Bruce Timm did an amazing job just steering that and knowing exactly how much style he had to put in, how to do it. One thing I always remember about them as well was that a lot of the fights in it were very kind of 1 or 2 punches. That was it.
Yeah.
If you actually, even when it's like huge guys fighting huge guys, there's a lot of grappling. It's almost wrestling style. There's a lot of grappling, there's a lot of throwing, and then someone lands a punch and knocks the other guy out. And even when it's Superman thrown down with Orion, the son of Darkseid, like, it's still that kind of very quick bang, you're down. And again, I think it was to make sure that they weren't sacrificing any of the visuals, because if you look at the characters, the proportions on them are ridiculous in those series. They don't look normal at all. But and they couldn't do that. You wouldn't be able to move them a lot of the ways that you normally want them to.
I've just looked at a picture of Catwoman, and I was like looking down through it, and then I went, I'm trying to imagine what kind of a cat she looks like, because she's so stylized at this point. Like, I have no idea what animal she's supposed to be anymore.
I think it's not a Siamese cat. It's it might be.
It could be a Siamese one.
Yeah, no, it is. It's Siamese because she has 2 Siamese cats in the animated series. So
That makes sense.
she actually has 2 that she looks after. But yeah, so that was kind of like that animated series. I thought it's probably like I said, it holds up as kind of a lot of the perfect performances. You have Kevin Conroy doing the Batman. You have Mark Hamill doing the Joker. You have what's his name? It's after escaping me now. But like even like the Jim Gordon in it could have been better. Alfred was brilliant in it. I mean, I think I would not be surprised if Michael Caine said, "Oh yeah, when I was learning how to do Alfred, I just sat and watched Alfred in all those cartoons." Because it's that really, like, he's the one person who Batman is open and honest and funny with, and is actually like, you know, so there is the kind of sarcasm thing because it's like, yeah, you're my employer and you're a billionaire and you're Batman, but I did change your nappies.
Yeah,
you know
that
what I
kind
mean?
of thing.
Like I did essentially raise you, so I'll let you away with a lot of shit, but I'm not going to let you away with, you know, if you need talking down, I'll talk you down.
Yeah.
So and that comes across quite well in the Nolan films. That was one thing I really liked Michael Caine in that. I think those films would have been fucking awful without him there.
Yeah.
Because he kept Batman himself actually like quite
Grounded, nearly.
yeah, but
As
human, I would say.
Yeah.
He keeps it human because it's the one guy who can because there's the whole thing of, and it is meant to be like that, where Lucius Fox's character, and again in the Bruce Timm stuff as well, it's very wink wink nudge nudge. Oh, I wonder what you're going to use this for. And again, Morgan Freeman does that great, and it's, you know, his version of the character matches up quite well with that. But the fact that he never directly says Batman, that's quite good. Like, so but you do have to have someone who can overtly state, yeah, but stop being a dickhead when you're being the Batman, yeah? So, yeah, I mean, that's, like, the character, I think, was... And it's nice to see that they've kind of based it on that. That it transitioned forward into the films.
It is that kind of... It's not quite the sick of your shit stuff, but, like, if you see Batman... I know they keep going back and doing the stories of everything that made him Batman, but the point is you're seeing the end of the road. Just having Alfred there doing a little... kind of wink or take him down a peg is the kind of saying, no, I've seen you through every step of the way. I've seen you become what you are now. Like, this is, I'm not in awe of you like everyone else is.
Yeah, and it's that how, you know, he's seen him as it's literally when you've wiped someone's arse, you're not gonna deify them in any way, shape, or form, and you're not gonna be afraid of them either. Like, it's, you know. I'm sure whoever was wiping Marlon Brando's arse towards the end of his life didn't think he was the greatest actor ever, but, you know.
Probably not, yeah.
But, I mean, and they're ones that I think are quite good, and I think it's actually quite good. There's a few of my friends who, they have kids now, and they're like, the kids are like 4 or 5, 6 years of age, and I was saying to them, I was like, are you going to start watching the Batman stuff with them soon? And they're like, I don't know, the films are a bit heavy. I was like, no, fuck the films. Are you going to sit down and watch the series with them? And they're like, oh my god, there's like 10 years worth of those cartoons there that I can go and watch with them. And I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you pretend like these are new, like, it's like, yeah, like once a year, like over the Easter, you sit down and you watch a season of it with them, like that type of thing.
And then they can watch it for the whole year.
Yeah, you build it up, and then, or, you know, you bring in, we do 2 seasons, and then the third year it's like, oh, it's the last season of Batman, but here's the Justice League, and they're like, oh, holy
I was going to say, when they're remastering the Arkham games in 10 years' time, they can then give them those and give them the first of the remasters.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's I think it's a great thing there, because, like I said, it's those little details that made it stand out, those little details that they wouldn't have had to do for kids, that keeps adults interested in it as well. It's just that little sign of quality, and people appreciate that. And then we had more games first, films. Did Arkham Asylum come before?
Yeah, the first Arkham game came out before. Well, I mean, there was the Nolan movies and stuff. They were all fairly around the same time, were they?
There's a big jump between the first one and the rest, I think.
Yeah. Well, we can jump over to the Arkham games as a follow-on from the animated series, because they did the smartest fucking thing they could, which is keep on all the voice acting talent that they could keep, and it's so funny because it doesn't seem like they should have.
Arkham Asylum was 2009, and Batman Begins was 2005.
Yes, that makes sense.
It doesn't feel like it was 2005, but
No, it doesn't. Those two came out, and there was a big jump between them and the next installment in each of their series. But for Arkham Asylum, they changed up the style. They made it a bit more gritty. It's a really nice superhero. It's a really nice video game style in that, like, all the characters are big and everybody's this big kind of fucking ridiculous muscled character. Yes, the idea that Batman in that game is crawling through vents and like actually doing anything sneaky is so fucking ridiculous. But they made the entire world match it. All the bad guys, all the henchmen are fucking massive. When you jump up and hide on something, it's like nearly 30 feet up and it's on a giant stone gargoyle. Everything looks as big as you and as imposing, so it kind of works. Everything looks dirty and filthy. Everything, like, they really got away from the cartoon or even comic book styles and did a style that kind of followed on from the Batman Begins movie, but like they just made something that was kind of scary. Like, everything looked as terrifying as it would if it was real life, if there were insane people running an asylum. And like, they did such nice, like the TV with the Joker, or the Joker with the TV on his head and all those kind of bits, because they were able to go a bit more realistic with it, looked really terrifying. It wasn't done as comedy, it was done as like, this place is fucking mental.
I think that's quite good though, because as you were saying, like, they kept the voice cast, and I think it was timed very well, because they were able to basically, like, they were able to recognize people will know these voices because they grew up watching the cartoons. This will feel like Batman for them straight away because it's the same people. It's the natural progression. So it's like, we've matured, like the people and the fans will have matured. So let's mature the style of the game. Let's mature the style of the story, and that, like, and you're able to, like, that go more realistic and go that little bit more kind of fucked up then.
And I absolutely believe that the people doing it, like Mark Hamill and stuff, and Kevin Conroy, like, Kevin Conroy was doing Batman for 30 years. He was doing it, like, going on and on. I think some of the other ones might have felt a little bit kind of, you know, like, we could be finishing up with this. We don't need to keep doing the stuff. But the idea that they were able to do a more fucked up version of it and a more over the top version, and basically, we want you to come in and do the stuff that you're good at doing, but we want you to take it, like, as far as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, like, and it works. And like, Mark Hamill has said that he absolutely adores doing the Joker. It is just, he has so much fun doing it.
You can tell it's fun. Like, he does it, and then Arlene Sorkin does Harley Quinn, and it must be such a fun. Those two characters must be so fun to play. Yeah, absolutely. The first Arkham Asylum game, it was the changes that they made, the things that they did, like making Batman a grappler, making him the fighting system and that, kind of the stealth, the fact that he can't kill 10 people at once, that he kind of has to kill one person at a time, but it's not quite stealth. It's picking people off one at a time. It feels more like you're playing the Predator rather than like a proper ninja. It is someone who is powerful but is just biding his time, rather than somebody who needs to sneak through an area because they are not powerful. The battle system that suited Batman so well, and suited the kind of ridiculously muscular character that he was.
Yeah, I mean, no, go on.
Just the only gripe I have with it is every single new game them having to take away all his gadgets again.
That's Metroid syndrome, though. I mean, it's the whole thing of they do it less in Arkham Knight. In Arkham Knight, it's more a case of a new threat arises that is already like has a backdoor into his systems and knows how to take him down. So they know the natural counter. So he's like, okay, my standard tools don't work. I need something new. It's not a case of, I've lost all my standard tools. It's like, these are no longer getting the job done.
There's a bit in maybe in Arkham City where he has to remember how to throw someone. Like, he has to remember his fighting moves and shit. And I'm like, no, Batman knows how to throw someone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, whereas in Arkham Knight, they didn't do that. It was the whole, like I said, it was the whole thing of yeah, you've got all those toys that you had before, but none of them do shit anymore. You need to you need to step your game up. And it's like, oh, okay. So it's not he didn't get depowered. It's just the enemies matched. It's the arms race thing, which makes more sense, and it makes me feel more kind of like, okay, yeah, this works. Just you mentioned there as well, like Harley Quinn. So again, it's something that just the odd viewer might not know. So Harley Quinn is the only character in it that originated from the TV series. She was created specifically for the animated series.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and she was so popular that she then was transitioned over into the comics and eventually into games and films. But she was created specifically for the TV series. So
the Joker has a right hand man, so to speak, to
yeah, and there was also they did it in the same thing happened with the animated X-Men series from the 90s as well. The character of Jubilee was created specifically for the TV series.
Sparkles.
One of the most powerful mutants ever, yes. Because that's her doing nuclear fission, though she doesn't realize it. But yeah, so it was just one of those things I thought was quite interesting, that like she is the character that blurs the lines in the Batman universe, and that she does do good stuff as well. I think in the comics, in one of the comic runs at the moment, she's currently in a long-term lesbian relationship with Poison Ivy.
Yeah, Harley and Ivy or something is just the name of the comic. And they always seem to be hinting at the covers. I've never read the comic.
No,
but like now that you say that they're in a relationship, I was like, oh good, so that wasn't just clickbait. That is actually them.
No, and it's actually done. It's kind of treated as a, like they at this point, like Harley is still doing the whole kind of, she just wants to have a laugh, she wants to have fun, and Poison Ivy is still trying to be like, look, I'm doing what I'm doing to try and preserve nature. This is not like, if they get in my way, I'm gonna deal with them. But like Harley's the one who's like, yeah, but we can have a bit of a laugh while we're doing this. Like, but like I said, like she's always been kind of that kind of grey area where sometimes she'll help the good guys, sometimes she won't, and it's the unpredictability, and it's very interesting that like she's become one of the most popular characters in the Batman mythos, and she was created. She never like she made it to the comics, I think 3 years after she showed up in the TV series.
Right. It is such a fun character of whatever she's doing seems to be for the laugh. And like if she does something good, it's because she was just hanging out with the right people that time. She didn't take it upon herself to do it. It's because, what are you guys up to? Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean like I said, sometimes, and it's more like in the Injustice thing, they go into it a bit more, but there is the whole thing in Injustice where because the Joker gets killed, she wants to stop Superman, she wants to get revenge. But then when Superman becomes a dictator, essentially ruling the world, she's like, no, this is wrong. People need to be free. People need to have choice. Yeah. And she realizes that, like, yeah, okay, I can see why this is, like, I know I've done some bad shit in the past, but this is something that we need to stop. And, joking aside, let's actually get this dealt with. Like, and it was interesting to see. It was a nice little kind of character development thing.
I didn't until years and years and years later see that scene from the animated series where she hops up on the Joker's desk while he's working on something and asks him if he wants to rev his Harley, and he just pushes her off the desk. And like years later I was like, I'm really glad I didn't see that. It would have been weirdly formative for me back in the day.
There was also, I think it's in one of the comics, because they actually started a comic line where the art style was done to match the cartoon series, and there's a bit where it's like they're coming down off a Zeppelin, and Batman has Harley over his shoulder, like tied up, and the thing explodes with the Joker on it, and she's like, Puddin', and like as if the Joker, and Batman's like, I think at this point he probably is, and it's like, Jesus man, he just died, like give it a rest, Batman has no chill. So it was.
Batman has very little chill.
No. It's
I love that meme where
his belt.
All those pouches and no chill. I love that meme where it's like just every time he shouts at someone in the Nolan movies, it's like, where is she? Where's the detonator? What have you done with her? And then it just comes up on the screen, world's greatest detective.
Yeah. I think there was also it might have been an outtake or something, or it might have just been like a piss take, that he did on some show. But there's a bit where it's like like Lucius Fox, like, anything else, Mr. Wayne? And he's like, can we fix the ears? I can't hear a thing. Apparently I'm shouting a lot. I don't get it.
That's great.
Being able to hear the volume of his own voice. He's just roaring like. I was like, yeah, it's a nice little touch.
Yeah, it's good.
But but yeah, there was actually just around the same time as the Nolan. Sorry, not as just after the Nolan films started, and around the same time as the games came along. There was another animated series, and it's just called The Batman. Now, I did mention it before, where they didn't use Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, anything like that. They redesigned all the characters. They're a lot more stylized. It's very it's kind of a weird influence of kind of the style of art that was on Teen Titans.
Okay,
remember the Teen Titans cartoon, and
I
some
remember
anime chibi style in a weird way.
Yeah,
it's not chibi.
I remember all the web comics and everything going that style in the early noughties, because clearly there was an anime chibi kind of influx that was happening.
Manga Studio was probably cheaper than Photoshop. That's probably all it was. But in the cartoon, it's there's elements of that kind of chibi style in like the size of the eyes and stuff like that. But it's only for like overemphasis on certain points. The majority of it is just kind of more sleek and stylized, and it's sticking to having a kind of a very distinct aesthetic, like the original Bruce Timm series was, but it's not Art Deco. It's more Japanese influence than that. Some great voice acting in it, some great character redesigns. There is probably like one of my favorite Batman stories of all time is the whole thing where the Joker is sitting there watching TV, and he's got a lot of newspapers, and he's seeing all the chaos, and it's all being blamed on Batman. He's like, someone must stop this. This man is clearly ruining our city. And then next of all, you see the Joker putting on a shitty looking Batman suit, and he's like, he's going through, but Batman has been infected with laughing gas, with the Joker gas, so he's trying to come up with an antidote. So they run into each other, and Batman's cracking all the jokes, and Joker's like, this isn't funny, you're going down. And it's like, and like the Penguins look at them both going, what is wrong with you pair? Like, he's in the middle of going, this is too weird. And there's a bit where he goes, this is too weird, and he just leaves. The Joker's like, the Penguin's like, nope, can't deal with this. And he just leaves because the pair of them are too fucked up. Like, but I don't know. I mean, I liked it. One of the things they did quite well in that, I thought, was the Joker in that version of Batman could go toe to toe with the Batman.
Right.
So it wasn't just a case of, it was, yeah, I can try and outsmart you, and sometimes I will, but you can't just win by beating me up, because I can swing a dig as well as you can. Yeah,
I like the kind of burly versions of the Joker sometimes, but I do like the skinny, all I have is my henchmen and my plans version as well. And I liked at the end of Arkham City, there's a bit where the Joker is forcing you to fight like monstrosities or something, but he's also in the arena, he's also around, and you can swing a dig at him and stuff, and you will knock him out with a hit. But if you get knocked down, he's got a stiletto knife, like a little thin knife, and if you get staggered at all, he is on top of you in a second, and he will start just giving you digs. And it's so funny to see small amounts of your health coming down, but he's so violent and horrible and rat-like and just like getting these in. And I really love that they put that touch in. It doesn't do a huge amount of damage to you, but it keeps the Joker in the fight, and you realize that like all of these machinations that he has all these machinations to try and fuck with you, because he's not a very powerful man, but if it comes down to it, he'll still do it.
Yeah, it's every opportunity, and it's, yeah. But then, so we had the games. The games are quite good. I particularly liked Arkham Knight. I would recommend. That's quite good. There's a whole thing, and again, we're coming into spoiler territory here. So they essentially killed off Batman. Killed off the Joker. Batman breaks his neck at the end of the city. And there's the whole thing where at the very start of Arkham Knight is him getting cremated. You have to press and hold the trigger to fire the furnace to burn him. And when you start, like, he's still got the grin and his eyes are closed, and then the music kicks in, and it's like a kind of a cheesy show tune type thing. and there's flashbacks to the point where he's like walking to Arkham City, where he's walking out with the dead Joker in his hands, and all the cops are like, "Holy shit, he finally did it!" But Batman has been gets hit by scarecrow gas, and he starts seeing the Joker. And the Joker will keep on just randomly appearing throughout the entire game and talking to you. And it's that whole thing of, it's the surprise thing. You'll rotate the camera. You'll be standing in an empty room, and you rotate the camera in such a way that the camera will be on the left hand side of Batman, will go behind Batman, and when it comes out the right hand side, the Joker's now standing there, and it's seamless. And he's just it's like he becomes this, like, the best director's commentary of all time, because he's just tormenting you the entire game. There's bits where he's in your car and he's talking to you while you're driving, like, and you can't get rid of him.
This is where I come back to the idea that Batman as a character is clearly, like, completely insane, and that he's collecting different psychological maladies and different psychopathies and things. That he knows that when he's been hit with scarecrow gas, or he's been hit with various gas and things, he's collected enough information that he thinks he can deal with it. Whether he can or he can't is another thing. But he's like, no, I think I know what's happening. I think I know which direction I need to keep moving. We can still work with this, even if I'm completely fucked and I'm seeing things. I've studied this enough to know where I'm going.
Yeah, and it's... Yeah, I mean, and it just kind of... like, there are moments all through that game then where you're like, oh, I don't know if that was Joker gas or not. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's you know... But it's... I think it was quite
all
a
of the
good
games
finish
playing
off.
that well.
I think it was quite a good finish off to the whole series. John Noble did a great version of the Scarecrow as well in it. But so then we come to the part where we're going to argue with the Nolan films. So we've talked about this off topic, we've talked about this off recording device, but I maintain certain things about the Nolan series that Johnny does not agree with, to say the least.
Well, as an agent of chaos, I have to like the Joker. Like, the Joker is, to me, one of the best characters of all time, and I love delving into his motives and delving into the idea of chaos as an entity. As if these are gods, then he is Discordia, the god of chaos. He is just this ridiculous creature. And I like the Scarecrow as well. I like the Nolan Scarecrow. I like all of the characters come around it. And I have no primer for Bane. All I knew about Bane was that he was the big Mexican dude who breaks Batman at some point. So when Tom Hardy, is it Tom Hardy? It comes on and starts doing he's got his Tinker coat on, his Del Boy. He's got the thumbs hooked in and starts doing a voice that I really feel like someone should have stepped in. A
voice that was based on a guy who was essentially king of the Tinkers. A guy who, there's documentaries on him. And he was like the bare fist boxing champion of the English and Irish Tinkers for fucking decades. And it's all based on him.
I would have preferred... What was Javier Bardem's character in the Bond movies? Where he was just this weird, not from anywhere, but like weirdly tan dude who was just from another country. I feel like that's what they're trying... Yeah, I feel like that's what they were trying to do, but they just hadn't... They didn't even land on what continent this dude should have been from. See,
this is the thing. So yeah, for our
he's
listeners, my contention is that Bane is the best villain of the Nolan trilogy.
Right.
And part of that is down to, as Johnny was saying, he doesn't have a frame of reference for Bane, but I do, because I grew up with the comics, and there's a lot like Bane shows up a lot over, say, the last 20 years from when he was first introduced, and he broke Batman's back over his knee. Hence the bit at the end of the fight with him where he picks him up and basically snaps his back over his knee. That's a complete nod to that, and it was the cover of it. I think it was Batman issue
Nightfall.
Yeah, it's the Nightfall series, which has been introduced. I think it's issue 498 of the Batman run. Could be 499, but 500 was when the new Batman suit came in, which is a horrible mistake, and thank God they avoided that. But anyway, but yeah, so the thing about him is that he is meant to be, yes, physically Batman can't really take him down. So in the comics, he has this thing called Venom, and it's a drug that he takes. And when he takes the drug, it's PCP and steroids mixed together. He hulks out in the extreme and can like rip car doors off and throw them at people and stuff like that and use them as shields.
Yeah.
And they've avoided that to a degree. It's in the films. It's the respirator is what's keeping him alive, and there's something in there that's just and he's just because he was raised in hell on earth. He is this, and not raised, but he was there for so long, and he survived it, and he survived the whole place turning on them. He survived a plague. He survived the doctor trying to fix him. He survived the League of Shadows. It was this whole thing of he is just. Again, if every villain is a personification, that like the version of in the film is or has like a driving force personification. In the film, he is the will to live, the will to survive, the will to get the job done. And that's the whole thing where like all that dialogue where he has, it's the whole victory has defeated you. It is such a great line for summing up Bane, because they are the polar opposite of every time Bane has tried to do something for trying to better himself as part of a cause, or even like just as a human being, something has gone horribly wrong. Now, it doesn't explain how he got to the prison, but he tries to protect the child, and the whole prison turns on him. But he survives. He fights through and he survives. So the doctor tries to fix him, but fucks it up. And then finally, when the League of Shadows come to rescue and to clear out the prison, they bring him in. But Ra's al Ghul is so embarrassed and ashamed of what has happened, and Bane is such a forcible reminder that he excommunicates him, even though Bane was like wholeheartedly committed to what the League of Shadows wanted to do.
Yeah, but the Joker sets fire to a pile of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you win. No,
Yay!
but it's that whole thing of like he is the guy who just never gives up.
I
Because
guess
Batman is meant to be I never give up, but it's like you keep fucking winning, so of course you're not going to give up.
I genuinely think my issue with the Bane character is that the Joker doesn't have a past, and that works so well for me. And that any time they try to do like to the point that he's a very literal, unreliable narrator about his own past in one movie. Whereas whenever they try to do Bane's background, it is the equivalent to me of seeing Batman's parents die or something like that. I kind of don't care. Like I don't care if that's where you came from.
His background through the film is not his background. It's Talia's background, and Batman assumes it's his and just gets it wrong. So you only see his at the very kind of last minute.
Yeah.
When she sticks the knife in and she tells him what's happened. And you realize it's like, okay, so she overcame the fear to make the jump and get out of the thing. But he overcame 20 times as much as her. And it was, look, it's the whole thing of whatever a woman can do, a man does just more, right? But no, you know. But no, it's that whole thing of it's brute force determination. And you can even see it. There's the whole thing of, like I said before, like, so he gets in the fight with Batman, and kicks the absolute living shit out of him, breaks his back and all the rest, brings him to the prison, dumps him in the prison, and there's even he's talking to him, and he's like, "No, I gotta break your spirit first. You gotta know what despair is. I have to completely crush you. It's not good enough for me to beat you because I know I can beat you. I have to break your spirit." And then when he goes, there's a moment where he goes to stand up. And he leans on Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne cries out because his back has been broken. But the fact that as Bane goes to stand up, he can't stand up without that. He cannot stand without putting his weight.
Oh yeah, he is an already broken man talking to a newly broken man.
But that's the thing, he's already broken, and he's still fucking annihilated Batman. Like, it's this whole demonstration of, like, you are in your peak, like, you at your peak, you will not be able to take me. And that's kind of I really like that about him. Like,
yeah,
he still only dies because he gets shot with a fucking cannon. You know what I mean? It's
I don't know what it is that gets me about Bane, that maybe honestly the Nolan Bane just doesn't seem at home in the Batman universe or something to me. It is his terrorist ideals are just a little bit too close to proper terrorist ideals.
I think I mentioned it before, but I don't think we talked about it on the podcast, where there is a story that very much influenced the third film. And that's called No Man's Land. And in the broader DC universe, there was a major disaster. It was averted at the last minute, but there was ridiculous amounts of damage done. And then a massive earthquake strikes Gotham. And basically fucks the entire city. And America can't pay for the repairs for both. So they basically declare Gotham and No Man's Land, like, we're not responsible for that anymore. Because we have too much other shit that we're trying to deal with. And if we accept that as well, and we respond as our constitution demands, we're fucked. So they basically cut it off. So everybody comes in and claims their own areas. And they basically carve up the city. And there's tons of nods to it in the film. Like the whole thing where they're drawing the Batman symbol with chalk on the walls to kind of mark the routes. There's a whole thing where as the different group gangs take over the city, and as you're reading through the book, it's 5 graphic novels, and as you're reading through it, every 2 or 3 issues, so yeah, every graphic novel is 6 issues, every 2 or 3 issues within it, you'll get a new version of the map, because territory is being redrawn, because somebody took a block off someone, and
it's like Risk Legacy. It's nice.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And but there's a whole thing where, like, Batman comes back and reestablishes the myth, and it's him letting a guy shoot him and getting up and just shrugging it off, draws his thing on the wall, and then walks away. And that's like in the film, it's him, you know, like the flare, you know what I mean, and it painting it onto the bridge. Bane is one of the main bad guys in that, and when Bane shows up, Bane is like, like Bane shows up, I think, around book 4, book 5, and there's a lot of build up to it. The Joker does something to nearly top the Killing Joke. Like to top,
the crippling of Barbara Gordon.
So we'll go for spoilers again. He kills Gordon's wife.
Jesus, wow.
He makes Gordon choose between all the babies in the city or his wife. Right?
I mean,
because he's like, this is the perfect time to go fuck with Jim Gordon again, isn't it? And it's like,
I love the idea the Joker didn't know what was going on for a little while. Like 2 days later, he walks outside and just sees like people screaming past and like gangs and stuff. He's like, oh wait, yeah, that thing.
Yeah, it's like it's a very fucked up moment, but it's so there is basically, he shoots her, and when he shoots her, he's not smiling. It's that whole, they even do the whole kind of similar scene where he's standing there and he's half in shadow. But it's not the whole him in the tourist gear with the camera and the gun and the grin. He is straight faced and he's shooting her and she's holding a baby. And he's basically blowing her head off as she's standing on the doors to the orphanage, basically protecting all these kids. So yeah, there's a whole like fucked up arc. There's a great bit with Two-Face where Two-Face puts himself on trial.
I like that nod in was that in Rises, where Cillian Murphy's Two-Face was the judge for he was, sorry, Cillian Murphy, yes, sorry, I'm mixing those guys up then, but yeah, the Scarecrow as the judge was a nice little moment.
Yeah, and he even has his little kind of frills on his shoulders at that point, almost the feathers coming out and stuff, like, because his suit's a bit fancier, like. But in No Man's Land there's a great scene where there's so Montoya, the police officer who's one of the ones who betrayed, who was like working for Maroni in The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
she's actually a good guy in this. She's not like corrupt or anything like that, and she's one of the characters that kind of is recurring all the way through. She's like Jim Gordon's right hand, right hand all the way through it. And there's a bit where she goes after Two-Face. And Two-Face is gonna like just wreck the place, and she's like, "No, you used to stand for justice." And they're in a court, and he's like, but it's abandoned. He's like, "You used to stand for justice," and she points up at the statue of Lady Justice, and it's like, "You used to follow her. She was your only boss. What happened?" He says, "You know you've done horrible things. Why don't you put yourself, like, you need to account for that before you can make anyone else account for it?" And he was like, "No, you're right. And he puts himself on stage, and just the layout of the pages is quite well done because it's divided in 3 vertical columns. The left-hand column of the page is the Two-Face part of the face. Or sorry, it's the Harvey Dent part of the face.
Right.
The right-hand column is the Two-Face part of the face. And the middle part is a short transcript of the pair of them talking and cross-examining each other and stuff. And he eventually finds himself guilty and turns himself in. It's a really well-crafted thing. Like, it's the actual, like, I think it goes on for 5 or 6 pages. And him dealing with himself is harrowing almost. It's just like, this is such good writing. But it's all of that, like, and like when Bane shows up, like they've dealt with the Joker, they've dealt with the Penguin, they've dealt with with Two-Face, and all the other lunatics that have shown up over the course of the previous 4 books. And then when Bane shows up, Batman's almost broken. He's just like, oh, I can't keep doing this. And again, it's that whole thing of Bane's like, yeah, I've got your number. Just don't even try. Like, there's a point where Batman says that he ignored Bane for so long because he was like, he's going to be the hardest one to deal with. And that's why I just think the films did him great justice in that whole thing of, yes, it takes a cannon, it takes someone else using a cannon to kill Bane, because Batman was never going to do it. Batman was never going to beat him.
I guess it's the equivalent of arguing that a tidal wave is a better bad guy than something like asbestos. Whereas a tidal wave, it's coming, there's nothing you can fucking do. You can fire a gun into a tidal wave, there's nothing bad that's happening. Whereas with the Joker, asbestos is like, it's in your homes, everyone's a little bit crazy. If you try to take it out, that's when it gets bad. If you try to actually address it, it likes that. It decides to fuck with you a little bit. Or like a parasite or hysteria or something like that. I need it to be a little... I just find a tidal wave as a bad guy to be a little bit... I can't get as invested. But I don't have the history behind it. I know the Joker. I grew up with the Joker. I've grappled with my own Joker.
I would be interested in seeing what you think. I'd ask you to go off and read No Man's Land.
Yeah, I think so.
And then see what you think of it, because I think your appreciation of the films will change, and I think your appreciation of the character of Bane will change, just because of how intimidating a force he is. He's one of those characters, because a lot of people only know him like visually, they just assume he's just a big muscly guy who doesn't think a lot.
Yeah.
But in terms of in Batman terms, that's more Solomon Grundy or Killer Croc. It's not Bane. Bane is meant to be the, like, everything you can do, I can do better. So you're going to have to, like, pull out something ridiculous to stop me.
He is real life Dolph Lundgren, where he's like got all these bachelors and doctorates, but also happens to be a ridiculous muscle creature.
He's a master's in chemical engineering. There's a friend of mine who has the exact same master's as him. That's
really?
how I know. Yeah, it's a master's in chemical engineering.
Brilliant.
But
I wonder if he's ever taken any chemicals.
But yeah,
sneaky Russians.
It's just it's an odd. I get what you're saying about the Joker. I think for me though, the problem with the Joker was that I'd seen him done too many ways before.
Yeah.
So I was just like, cool, this is just an interesting version. Whereas Bane was a character they'd never gotten right before. I think every version of the Joker nearly has been done right to some degree. It's like, even go back to Cesar Romero playing the Joker in a
vaudevillian kind of
and he wouldn't
style.
Even shave his
that
mustache,
works.
and you can see the mustache through the makeup and everything else. But it was still a great Joker, and because the Joker is one of those characters that is very fluid. Like the Joker is as much a reflection on he's a reflection on Batman, but he's a reflection on whoever's writing the Batman comic at that time. A lot of the other characters are less fluid, so you get it right or you don't. You know what I mean? It's like, did they fit with that character? Whereas because the Joker is chaos, because he is unpredictable, you can write him a completely different way from one story to the next, and it doesn't feel jarring. So I mean, when I saw it, I was just kind of like, yeah, he's good. I think he's the second best villain in that film in the trilogy. Never mind I think
after Harvey Dent.
Yeah, because I just think Aaron Eckhart did such a good job of playing both sides.
He did an amazing job. Yeah.
Like I think I said it before on the podcast where that was the first time we'd seen both sides of it on film, because we see Billy D. Williams playing Harvey Dent even in passing. I think he's in 3 scenes in total between the two films, or 4 scenes maybe, between the two Burton films. We see Two-Face by Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones just having fun, like just being like, yeah, fucking them.
I think everyone had fun in those movies.
Yeah, and it's we never see the transition. You never see the thing, and that's another novel that I would recommend to people. I think you've read it, but it's a series called The Long Halloween. So yeah, so The Long Halloween, kind of, Jeff Loeb is a writer for DC. I think he's done some Marvel stuff as well, but he wrote a series of books maybe 10 years ago. I think probably close to 15 at this point, where he kind of went back and retreaded the origin story of Batman. So Batman, there's like a year one thing. The year one is very much focused around Carmine Falcone and the Falcone crime family, the Moroni crime family are mentioned. All of the gangster guys who show up in the Nolan trilogy are all kind of very prominent in this series. I'd say it'd be closer to 20 years ago now that I think about it, that these books were written. It's just one of those things that just they've aged so well. They feel timeless when you're reading them. So it's like this could be whenever. Like, and then The Long Halloween is set after it. I think it's set maybe half a year, 6 months to a year after the events of year one.
Yeah.
And if it's more about the Falcones and the Moronis and that, but also because it's like it takes Batman back to Batman dealing with mafia. You know what I mean? It's not him dealing with villains, and it's about the origins of some of these villains, and there's little hints dropped at some of them, and one or two of them show up, like the Riddler and stuff like that. Riddler, Mad Hatter, and I'm trying to think who else. But a lot of it is actually set inside Arkham Asylum, and they all have the different characters like in their prison cells.
Yeah.
And the main origin story in that book is Two-Face. It's the full exploration of how Two-Face became.
It's really good, yeah.
And there's a lot of there's also like a whodunit thing going on. There's somebody who essentially looks like they're imitating Calendar Man. Calendar Man was a really shit villain, but because he only kills on major holidays, because he has this weird obsession with them. But it becomes a thing where like he's in prison, he's in Arkham, but somebody's imitating him, and then they're trying to figure out who it is and all this type of thing. Art style is very stylized art. Very like you're normally talking black, white, grey, and one color per page. And it suits it so well. Very good story for the origins of Batman. It's a nice perspective. I mean, like The Killing Joke is good. It is something I recommend people read. Don't watch the DVD because they added 20 minutes to the start of the story that fucking ruined it. There's also a book called The Man Who Laughs, which is a kind of an unofficial sequel to The Killing Joke. But it's interesting. It's not amazing, but it's a nice little kind of. If you like The Killing Joke, you'll like The Man Who Laughs. But I would definitely recommend if you're interested, if you're a big fan of the films in particular, I would recommend reading Year One, The Long Halloween, and then reading No Man's Land. They're kind of the big ones that they form they will tell you everything you need to know about the rogues more than Batman. But they also do a good job of showing Batman himself. So
I think that's fair, yeah.
If you like DC, because there's a few friends of mine who are like getting into comics recently because they're they have disposable income and they're more kind of like, yeah, I want to get into regularly reading comics and stuff. And they're all getting into Marvel because they find DC very hard to get into because again, it's the whole thing of the appealable characters. But if you find yourself reading stuff like No Man's Land, like
you make a good point that you can go back and read some of these things and they feel somewhat timeless. I think maybe some of the Frank Miller stuff not so much. With there's a fun 80s style to some of that.
You know what? The Dark Knight Rises, which is kind of his big Batman thing. I read it once and I was like, that's great. And I went back and read it then maybe 2 or 3 years later and it's like, I don't know. I think a lot of it was what kept my interest was wanting to know what's going to happen. But once you know, the story's kind of meh.
Yeah,
it's not one of those ones that it doesn't. I don't think it holds up as well. Like the craft of the storytelling isn't as good as the promise of what could be at the end of the story. If you get me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, but yeah, there's a very kind of 80s vibe off them. But yeah, no, I just think the Long Halloween, especially Long Halloween, was one that kind of always stuck with me as being, this is how all Batman should be told. This is And I've purposely avoided using the phrase "the goddamn Batman." If people don't know what that means, because that isn't distinct reference to something, look it up if you want to realize that even something as great as Batman can be written by somebody fucking awful and be shit. I'm not going to go into it here because I'll just get very angry.
That's fair enough. On the subject of the bad guys and stuff, I wanted to talk a little bit about the TV show Gotham. I watched, I think, 2.5 seasons of it, so into the middle of the third season. And I was expecting not to like it. I was expecting everyone to have a huge backlash against it. I was kind of watching it just to be ready for the backlash and get in on the joke from the ground floor. But I think it's super, super well done and super enjoyable. And for something that just doesn't have Batman in it and doesn't have it's like that's one I mentioned I like before. It's like Alan Moore doing the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. They couldn't use Sherlock Holmes or Dracula or anything like that because those are far too big a characters. They would overshadow everything else, and then you wouldn't give a fuck about Nemo or Jekyll and Hyde, or you wouldn't give a fuck about the other characters. But they do it really well in that it's all about Gordon, Commissioner Gordon, as he's rising up through the ranks in Gotham PD. There are those little. They do the little mafia stories. They do all the crime family stories because those are the ones that you can kind of pre-Batman. Those are the ones that seems like they would make a lot of sense. And then they bring up the big characters like the Penguin through those mafia stories, which I think is nicely done. And then you are introduced to, here's Edward Nygma, and you're like, I see. Well, that's great. And over the course of the series, people start becoming their characters, and you see how. But it's not flashback, quick fire origin. It is no. Let's look at them. Let's really put them under the magnifying glass of what they were before then.
Like I was saying, I've only watched the first few episodes of it. I haven't had a chance to watch it all yet, but it's something that I like the idea of. I like the idea of it, but it strikes me as a very kind of Marmite TV show. People will either love it or hate it. They don't.
Yeah.
There is kind of no middle ground on it. It's like you're either into it and you're like, I'm fully happy to watch a series about Gotham without Batman in it, or else they're going to watch it and go, these characters don't work without Batman. You're going to look at it one way or the other, I think.
Well, they do something which is quite nice, where when the Riddler character Edward Nygma finally snaps and attacks someone who had manhandled a woman or something like that, but like clearly is insane. He's not doing this out of any virtuous kind of nature. He's finally succumbing to an insanity that's inside him. There's a lovely bit where him and the Penguin hadn't met before, but the Penguin is on the run from the Mafia and gets injured, and Riddler finds him and takes him in, and like the Penguin comes to sitting at a dinner table, tied and bound and everything, and like he looks around and there's all this weird shit on the walls and like big neon question mark outside the window where it was like it's part of a sign for something else. It's part of an advertisement, but just happens to be outside the window. And the Riddler character is there, and I don't remember any of the dialogue from the scene because he pretty much just, as he's smiling at the Joker, produces another bound and gagged man who is the guy who'd been beating up a woman who you thought he'd killed episodes ago, and then like starts stabbing him to death in front of the Penguin. The Penguin kind of smiles and goes, all right, interesting. And that's the start of their little romance. They have this little thing after that, and you're like, that's really nice. I love the idea that because eventually all Batman villains team up at some point. I really want to see how they met each other and what little weird psychopathic things they did to, like, when they see each other at a party. It's like, oh, it's this guy. I love his work. He does weird shit.
There's kind of a reference to that in the Batman series, not the Bruce Timm one, the other one that I mentioned, where they don't really work together, but whenever the rogues will run into one another, there's very much like, hey, hang on. We already agreed. This was my night to pull a stunt. What are you playing at? Like, it's almost like there's like I think they do it in one episode where there's like a monthly meeting or monthly card game that they all go to, and they basically plan out what they're going to do for the month and carve up the calendar. So yeah,
I assume Calendar Man is taking notes. The last one I kind of want to talk about is one that came out after the Batman Begins, or possibly after Dark Knight, and it was an animated one. It was called Arkham Knight. And I love it just because for someone who hasn't grown up with Batman and stuff like that, every time I try to join in a new thing, whether it's the games or I pick a random comic or something like that, it does feel like someone else telling a very different story, because there's this mythos that goes back to when was the first Detective Comics? Were they the 30s?
Yeah.
Like it's a character who is now a prototypical character. He is something like a Robin Hood character. Like, you can just say the word and everyone knows what you're talking about. And the Arkham... There you go. And the Arkham Knight one is a bunch of kids playing with Batman, playing in the dirt, and they're in Gotham, and they all tell their own story about Batman. And it's done like the Animatrix in that it's a bunch of different stories told to make kind of an anthology. But every kid is an unreliable narrator. Every kid is telling something. And one kid is convinced he's a robot and is telling the story of cyborg Batman. And one kid is convinced he's a noir character and is telling the story of like crime underbelly Batman. And they're all telling stories. At the end of everything, like the the last bit is a gas bomb going off, and through the bomb, like, you see a tussle, and then a Batman figure walks past, and then Kevin Conroy's voice handing a toy back to one of the kids, going, "Here you go, kid," and walks off. And you're like, as far as they're concerned, they all just met they all just met their Batman. They all just met, like, none of them saw him properly. They all just met their Batman. It's a really nice, if you're recommending kind of what comics to read to get into it, I'm kind of recommending that as one, if people are looking for something slightly different to kind of tie it together. I think it's a nice one.
Yeah, no, that's decent.
Cool. Anything else you want to hit? You want to do a 20 minutes on Lego Batman?
Not really. Not really. I mean, like, look, this is the thing. We're never going to be able to cover every incarnation of it. The thing has been going for nearly 80 years. It's been treated in multiple different medias. I mean, I just kind of wanted to, like, it's kind of like, it is interesting how, like we're saying, like, the almost the different formats, how it's been treated. If you look back, you know, the comics, it's always been very much like the each writer puts their own stamp on it. When it comes into the games, with the games, it's very much, yeah, you get to be Batman, but it's not like you're not playing Batman really. You're playing Gotham. You're experiencing Gotham, and it's very much Gotham becomes the key aspect of it. And then there's almost like you know, it's the action RPG thing of every character eventually becomes Batman in an action RPG. I'm sure Assassin's Creed is like one grappling hook and a Batmobile away from it at this point. But but when you look at the cartoons, again, it was that whole thing of it's that style that it's very much they put their own, like Bruce Timm put his own visual flair on it, and it was weird. It's always struck me as being interesting that the TV series always seems to be the most universally revered out of them all.
Yeah. I think that's probably true.
The TV series probably had the lowest budget of them all. And I think it's that whole thing of, like, he's almost become too encumbered by all the stuff they tack onto him. When you go back to bare bones, because if you look at the films, if you go back and look at the Burton and Schumacher films, stylistic choice aside, they're constantly adding new stuff. Here's Batman. Okay, here's Batman, and now he's got new vehicles. And here's Batman, and now he's got a sidekick. And now he's got a second sidekick. And there's more villains. And it's like, great. But every time you do this, you're diluting out Batman. If you look at the TV show, like I was saying, there's so many times where the city is just empty. And it's just, you know, it allows you to focus on it. The games work because you're focused, because Batman is always front and center in the games. And with the films, they repeatedly strip him of everything. The end of the first film, they strip him of his home. They burn Wayne Manor to the ground. The end of the second film, they strip him of his love. They take away Rachel from him, and he loses hope. He loses any will to be Batman. And then in the third film, they strip him of being Batman. They're like, you don't have to be him anymore. And I think it's that whole thing of, if you got to keep it focused. Kids at home, when you go to write your own Batman story, keep it focused. Is what I'm saying.
Keep it tight.
Keep it tight. Cut off all the fluff. Just focus in. Pick one or two villains. That's it. And that's it's just something that I realized over the last few months, because I was watching back over all the films, all the TV series, let's say, over the last 6 months, and it was something that repeatedly jumped at me. It was like, the more they bring in, the more cluttered it gets. The more you're kind of, this isn't quite so interesting, because there is that whole thing of, yes, Gotham is as much of a character as Batman is. Yes, the villains are as important as he is. But without him, I don't think it's very hard to get it to work, which is why probably Gotham, the series, doesn't gel for a lot of people. Yeah,
I can see that.
But that's just my ramblings, my musings, as I sit here in Arkham scratching at the walls.
That adds up for me. There was always that long-running joke. There's one of the toy Batman figurines where he's got, like, Batman in space, and he's just got a little strip of a thing here that's supposed to, like, put air onto him, I guess, or something. And you're like, there's a great webcomic about it from Short Pact where he always does a comic book based on the toys. So it just shows Superman and Batman in space look at each other, and Superman goes, "Your head's not covered," and Batman just looks and goes, "Batman can breathe in space." And it becomes a thing of it. Yeah, Batman can breathe in space. Why not? Of course he can. Yeah, absolutely. Just keep sticking stuff to him. That's fine.
Sure, why not? I think in the early days of the cartoons, Superman couldn't. He used to have to wear a rebreather in space.
Yeah. And then eventually Superman can breathe in space.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because if anyone should be able to, should be Cyborg. But yeah,
cool.
I think that's it from me anyway. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add in.
No, that's good.
And I still think I'm right on Bane. And now you're going to go off and you're going to read No Man's Land and you're going to suddenly agree with me.
I will probably do that, or I will stage a gigantic city-destroying event, and I'll see if I do it in a Bane or Joker style, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, do that. That sounds makes more sense. Less effort as well.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've been building up to it my whole life, so let's see what happens. I love the idea people will be on the news going, no, now that we think about it, he wasn't the quiet type. He wasn't. This is exactly what we would expect.
It's like, surprised. I'm surprised it took him this long. So.
He's finding his voice. Anyway, cheers.
Thanking you.
Good stuff. Have fun.
But tangerine.